like, I was just like, this is such a stupid way to work. But that was, I guess that's how they were brought up in the industry. And that's kind of how it used to be, is keep everything close. Don't share that information. It seems outrageous now when you think of it.
This episode is brought to you by Indie Film Hustle Academy, where filmmakers and screenwriters go to learn from top Hollywood industry professionals. Learn more at ifhacademy.com. I'd like to welcome to the show Adam Scorgie. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing good, brother. Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, thanks for coming on the show, man. You and your producing partner, Shane, reached out to me about some really cool stuff you guys are doing. And, you know, I get so many requests to be on the show now. I think I'm very blessed that way. And for someone to get on the show now, I really have to be intrigued about what you're doing. So I was when I saw what you guys were doing, I'm like, this is a new angle. I haven't seen this before. And I think this could be valuable to the audience. So welcome, sir. I can't wait to get into the weeds.
Well, thank you. That makes me feel really cool. Yeah, we do think it's special. So it's always good to see that so far going out in the industry that it's being received that way, because we are, even with our work, I know you got to watch a couple of our films, but
yeah,
you know, we've been like you, fortunate where like so many people are coming to us this day to work. And, you know, it's nice to be in that position where you can be like, hey, like, if I'm not passionate about it, if I'm not intrigued, if I like, then it's a polite, sorry, I'm too busy, or it's a pass, right? Like, we're with docs now, you know, when you're starting your film career, you're trying to take anything and everything to pay the bills, right? You're like, someone's like, I'm going to do the worst job. You're like, we're going to film something on the sanitation units of toilets. You're like, okay, I'll do it, right? But now we're at a nice, fortunate thing where it's like, man, if we're not passionate about the subject matter, and it's, you know, some great feedback we received recently with like a lot of the talent we work with, where they're like, man, we could just, their families, like they're friends now, they're family to us, right? Like that's what I think we've kind of fallen in love in the doc world, is that you spend so much time telling these real stories of a Danny Trejo or a Michael Bisping that, you know, you feel like you know them and you become family, where like when you see them, it's hugs, and like, it really is like, it's like, oh man, so good to see you. And thank you for, you know, honoring my story correctly. So it's great that you're interested in what we have going now, because I think that's, you know, Shane really brought this to me. It you know, is this an expansion or evolution of our company. And I was hesitant at first. Like, I'm an old dog, right? I don't want to date you, but I was kind of like,
we're of similar vintage, sir.
Similar vintage. I like that. Similar vintage, right? Legacy is what they call it now, right? We're like of the legacy era, right? So,
right.
You know, when Shane first, I was like, man, NFTs and like the Web3. I'm like, dude, it's.
So before we get into all of that, I wanted to start off, before we get into the nuts and bolts of NFTs and what you're doing with them. Why, God's green earth, did you want to get into this business?
Into the film business?
Yes. Yes.
So there's two moments. So I think, like many, I started in front of the camera in New York. I went to film school and stuff like that. And I was okay. I realized quickly, being in New York, where there's a lot of talented artists, that I was way behind the eight ball as far as like, you know, I was in acting classes with people that could speak 3 to 4 languages. They could do dialects. They could sing. They could play 4 or 5 instruments. They were classically trained ballet dancers. And I was like, I have a Canadian accent and I can barely act. So I was like, I am like, okay. But I originally always wanted to get into it because I like to tell stories. And I did like the part of acting of, like, you know, being truthful in imaginary circumstance. I thought all that was pretty fascinating. But then when my biological father got sick, I came back to Canada and I inherited his strip club, which was a nightmare. We won't go down that road, but it led me to producing my first documentary called The Union, The Business Behind Getting High. And I specifically remember the moment when that kind of shifted for me. Is we originally, I'd seen Super Size Me, and I wanted to just make something like that, like something about the marijuana industry. I knew I had access to guys that were growing, and like most docs, it grew into something just so much more. And I remember the first time we premiered at a sold out screening at the Vancouver Film Festival, and you're in an audience watching something you created for the first time, and you're seeing people get emotional and people laughing and having a true experience that's affected them. And I remember sitting in the theater, and it was like watching the movie I'd seen it 100 times between the edits and other releases, but It was like watching it entirely for the first time with seeing the audience reaction. I remember saying to myself, I'm like, oh, Adam, you better find out a way how to make this a living, because you're never going to be able to do anything else. And I remember for many years, I was working 2 to 3 jobs to try to make film not a hobby, but a business. And it took a while to do that because you can't just go after a dream while not like, my daughter was young then. I had a family. I couldn't just be, well, I'm going to make it happen in years. Like, no, you got to pay bills now. And I remember just how empty it was looking at paychecks, just being like, wow, that's a piece of paper with numbers on it. I slaved for 3 months and that's all I get. And all I can think about is what bills I can pay off and this and that, that I knew at the end of the day, I had to figure out how to make film how to make my living rather than being a hobby.
And I tell you, man, docs are, I've been doing this for getting close to 30 years now, and docs are a lot easier to make money with than narrative features.
I would agree, especially nowadays in the digital age. It's really, because nowadays what we found a nice niche is, we partner with the talent. I don't try to come in and be a greasy producer like, Bisping's our 50-50 partner. Danny was our 50-50 partner, because I'd rather own, 50% of an amazing project than 90% of a shitty project. And when you're dealing with a doc and a factual story, there's nothing better than the person themselves promoting it, right? So if you shortchange them, then they start like, if they're like, okay, you want to nickel and dime me on back end or whatever else, then they're like, okay, I'm only going to do one tweet. I'm going to do, they're like, that's not the film, that's promotion, right? So that's what separates. It's like when you do a feature film, a lot of actors, for them, that is like a regular job. They're like, okay, I'm going to come out for my 7 days. I'm going to do my 7 days. Don't ask me to do anything outside of you're paying me to act for 7 days. You're not paying me to promote it, to talk about it. Those all come extra. And normally you only get those bonuses like, for free if it's like Scorsese or Tarantino or something that benefits like.
Because those guys are getting paid 20 million bones. So it's kind of like, yeah, dude, listen, I can't.
And a lot of times it is negotiated in the contract.
Oh,
with
absolutely.
Indie films, it's like, but with docs, like everyone, like even people will look at who we're interviewing. They're like, how'd you get all these interviews? We're like, we just asked them. And because they love the person or they all do it for free. We don't pay them. So we're already in a different place with a lot of these people. Even when we get like big name athletes or celebrities or something donating their time, they're in a much different place than for a scripted film, because they're donating their time for, like, we just did interviews. We're doing Dolph Lundgren's documentary now. And we just did interviews.
I can't wait.
I know, right? Like
I can't wait to see that.
I know. I grew up. That is my dude. If you and me are from the same vintage, like I grew up where it was Arnold, Stallone, Van Damme, Dolph. Those are like, that's my childhood, right? Like,
yeah.
So to know Dolph is like my boy now, and he's texting, he's like, what do you think about this, Adam? And then, we sat down with Arnold and Stallone within like a 1 day period. I was trying to be, you had to be professional, right? Where it was like, but I am geeking out. Like I called I was like a little kid. I called my dad from set. I'm like, Dad, we're about to interview Arnold. Like, and he's like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. And I'm like, I'm proud of myself. This is amazing. I was like, I have to go around the corner and act like a geek.
Exactly. But it's so funny because I've talked to so many people who've worked with some of these big giant stars and legends and the icons. I mean, Arnold and Sly are icons in the world. But they're Arnold and Sly every day of their life, and they are completely aware of how people react to them. So generally they know what it's like to walk into a room and they suck the air out of it because it's them.
It's
them. So they're aware of that, and from the best actors and icons put everybody at ease quickly. And like, hey guys, say, listen, I know Terminator. Got it. We're here. Let's all have some fun. We'll take some pictures. It's all good, man. It's all good.
Well, we were talking about how much of an adrenaline and energy dump was like, so, because both of them, we only had like half an hour, right? Because they're donating their time. So, but a lot of prep goes into that. We're there 4 hours ahead of time. We're setting up, we're dealing sound issues. Where's he going to sit down? Where's going to, like, Gold's Gym Venice was nice enough. They're like, they let us shut down the whole half of the gym, right? They're like, we'd never do this for anybody else, but because it's Arnold, we will. Right. So they let us do, like, everyone was so accommodating, but then we were so excited. And then you want everything to go smooth, right? Like, you only have half an hour and you are dealing with a real person, and there, something, Stallone had his publicist there. Arnold just rolled in by himself. But when it was all over and we did our photos and it was done, it was in the bag and the footage was backed up, like, everyone's like, oh, are you guys going to go and celebrate now? Like, we had dinner and a beer and we were done by like 9 o'clock, because even though the interviews weren't, all the prep and emotion and the anxiety of like, is something going to go wrong? Are they going to cancel? Is something, like, you're trying to go. And then when it's all over, you can just like, oh, like when you talk about the breath coming out of the room, when the interviews were over, it happens with all our big interviews. Like we're kind of like, man, like I didn't even work out this morning. Like feels like I ran a marathon. I'm exhausted because you just want it to go perfect. Right. And it did with both of them. And Arnold did it perfect where he was busting everybody. So did Stallone. They were busting people's balls and they came in to get everybody laughing. Like Arnold came in and right where our sound guy wanted to like, the sound mic popped out and like, we wanted to be perfect. So he's like, sorry, I got to come out. And he's like, oh, these fucking sound guys always worried. He's like anybody's going to care. The Schwarzenegger sound mic sticking out. And Kerry's like, oh, he's like, I'm kidding. He's like, I want you to be professional. Fix it. And then like our director was like, okay, I got one more question. He's like, you said that 3 times now. Okay, let's go. Right. Like it was awesome.
That's amazing.
And then you never know with like photos and stuff because it's always interview first. Of course, me and the team always want to try to get those and do that. But, you know, I was like, should we get, because COVID made things weird right now. We're both guys, but like, is COVID, we shot this a little while ago where people are still, but, you know, I had to because Arnold is just like, so I was like, hey, Mr. Schwarzenegger, I was like, really appreciate the time. He's like, of course, anything for Dolph. I'm like, can I trouble you for one more thing? Me and the team would like to get a photo. He's like, of course. Let's go. Let's do it. So we got a wicked photo. I'm going to put it in my office. It's, you know, feel very, I'm sure like yourself after years of grinding, it feels, you feel so blessed to be able to do something you're passionate about and be able to support your family is like truly when you're younger and you have those aspirations of what success is, you learn that it's like, oh man, I get to go to work every day and love what I do and go on these journeys and meet these icons and legends and travel. So I honestly, when people are like, oh, what do you do for a living? I'm like, I have my dream job. Like I really do. I love what I do. Love being able to tell these stories and travel the world. I wouldn't, if I could script it, I wouldn't change anything of what we're doing right now.
I'll tell you, man, I agree with you 100% because I've had the pleasure of meeting some of my heroes doing the show, and you're trying to be professional. Like I'm doing the interview, like I'm interviewing them. I'm on camera with them. And it's and you're just like, it's hard. Sometimes the geek comes out a little bit.
The geek comes out and it's okay. You realize it's okay.
They enjoy, they actually, I mean, as long as they're not, they generally enjoy it. Generally, there's a couple who didn't, but most of them are very enjoyable. Now, what I love about this idea, because you have a very specific way you're doing your docs, which I haven't seen like this before. One, I didn't know about the 50-50, which makes so much sense, and why people aren't doing that more often for some of these bigger subjects. It doesn't make any sense. Like, why would Michael Bisping, do any promotion for 10% of this? Like why? Whereas if he puts everything into it, he's gonna his niche audience, which is fans of Michael Bisping, he's the best at getting to them. Yeah, you can't pay for those.
Nobody's better, right? No one's better, and that's
right. So why not? So that's your marketing budget in many ways.
Yes. That's where it was funny because with Universal, the way they kind of do it. So release with Universal Pictures. It's our second studio release, which is amazing for those that are in like, it's, you know, for a doc to get that like back to back.
I was noticing that.
I think we're the only ones in Canada that have accomplished it. I'm kind of putting that out there to be challenged. And I don't think any other indie company out of Canada has accomplished back-to-back studio releases. I'm happy to be corrected, but as far as I found out, that's all I know. And it really comes from, and Dolph came from that because Bisping and Dolph having the same agent, and just like Bisping is like, you know, when we talked to Dolph's manager, Craig, Bisping did a movie with him, Never Back Down. And he was like, hey, what's the team like? Like Dolph's interested in doing a doc, and Bisping's like, dude, they're like family. Those are my boys now. Like, I want to just hang out with them. Like, I miss actually that we're not filming now. Like we spend so much time together. And he's like, and they're transparent and they're honest and they just become your partner. So his team and then his agent was the same. Like it was one of the easiest deals. Dolph's like, man, I saw your work. I love your work. Everyone around me says that you guys have been fantastic to work with. Like, let's go. Like, I was ready to do this big pitch, and Dolph's like, man, I've already sold. Like, everyone close to me has already worked with you and your team. My manager, my agent, they all say that you're the guys, and I can see the work for itself. I need no explanation there. And then getting to know Dolph, like him and his fiance, really emotional last couple of interviews, hugs and tears, and just being like, we're so thankful that you guys are doing our story. And, you know, it comes from that old adage your parents try to teach you, like, treat others as you'd want to be treated. And when I was early in the film industry. I'm sure you were, like, a lot of producers, man, they're scumbags. Like, and I remember working underneath them.
Shocking. Stop it.
Right. Like, and I remember just even being treated. I remember producers snapping their fingers at me and being like, I was so broke at the time and being like, but I needed the money. And I was like, you fucking snap your fingers at me again, I will break it off and stick it, like, but I hated that. And I wanted to change that culture. I wanted to be like, man, when I'm running a crew, I want to be like, the young guy comes up and has an idea, I'll listen. I'm not going to be like, no. And I hated the whole thing of like, I can't tell you budgets. I can't tell you how you do it. Because somehow if I tell you, that'll take away from what I'm doing. I always thought that was such an idiotic way to look at it.
Sure, because there's only $20 in the entire world. And if I tell you, like, you're going to take 10 of mine. Right.
To me, that's such an insecure, stupid, and I've had it like the other way where I've had young filmmakers reach out and I can see they put in the homework and they're like, Adam, could you look at my proposal? Could you look at my budget? When I'm like, man, I like this guy's energy or her energy. And I'll respond to them. I'm like, hey, here's the budget we had for this. Here's our audit. Here's how we did this here. And they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you were that candid and gave me all that information. And then they've gone on to get finance and they've come back and hired me. They're like, Adam, you didn't ask for anything when you did that. You just gave me some of the best advice I'd gotten. So now that we're financed, we just want to give you a producer credit or something. I'm like, wow. I'm like, see, that to me is the pay it forward rather than being like, well, no, I can't tell you budgets or who to go to at the network or how to finance this. Cause you might have a good project. You might take away from what I'm doing. Well, that says your project is shit. Because if your project is good, the network's going to get it, especially if you have experience, like helping others that are, again, there's like in any business, there's the crazies that come to you, these wild and crazy, and you can weed them out pretty easy where they don't have a lot I was called doing the homework, but when they come correct and they're like, look, I've been trying to put this together and I can see the script or the pitch deck or these things. And I say, look, tweak this up. Here's some examples of ours, come back. And when they come back, they're like, okay, I listened to what you said. Here's all the examples. Then I'm kind of like, wow, you did it. Okay. Here's who you go to at Super Channel, or here's who you go to at Bell, or here's my contact at Netflix. And people are like, I can't believe you give away your contacts. I'm like, man, you're putting in the work. I'm not
because Netflix is only going to buy the 2 documentaries.
Yeah, there's only 2 projects, right? Like, and I just gave it to him, and now I'm screwed. God damn it! I shouldn't have given it to him.
That's not the way it works.
But that's that stupid mentality. That was the producer era I grew up in. Like,
sure,
you're trying to learn when you're starting as like a line producer, and you're grinding, and you're trying. I remember as the line producer for a project. I won't name the company. I would ask how much we had to spend on things like, well, what's the budget for this? And I can't tell you that. Just get me quotes and I'll let you know if they're good or not. And I'm like, that takes twice as long. So now I'm going to reach out to 10 places, try to get quotes. And even then they would be like, well, what's your budget? I'm like,
I have no idea.
I don't know because the producers won't tell me. So could you just send me a quote and I'll see if they can approve it or not? Like, I was just like, this is such a stupid way to work. But I guess that's how they were brought up in the industry. And that's kind of how it used to be, is keep everything close. Don't share that information. It seems outrageous now when you think of it.
I mean, that's one of the reasons I started the show, is because nobody was telling the truth about what happens in the business. I couldn't find any shows that were telling people the realities of what was going on in the business. And I got a lot of shrapnel. I know you got a lot of shrapnel.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. And I just like within like the first 2-3 episodes, I was just like saying stuff that people were like, what? I've never heard that before. And I'm like, because we talk about it when we go out for drinks after a shoot.
Yes.
But no one's puts that information out there. So that's what I started doing. And the show blew up within like 3 months. It was number 1. And then it's been going ever since. And I just constantly am trying to tell everybody the realities of it. That's why I always ask, why did you start this crazy freaking business? Like this is an insane
business.
Why someone would come into it now? I don't even know if I would start now, to be honest with you. Like if I was 18 right now, I would probably be dumb enough to just go, I'm just going to go do it. I'm going to, and the people are going to check out my genius. They'll find my genius. I'm not saying that everybody shouldn't go for it, but really understand what you're walking into. And that's what I didn't know. If you're going to walk into a fight with Brisbane, understand who you're walking into the fight with. One, that you're in a fight. Secondly, who you're fighting with. And don't think you're just like, hey, man, this is really cool. And then a punch just comes in and knocks you off in your ass. And that's
I couldn't agree more. But that naivety when you're early in your career kind of helps you. It helps you and that really tests if you're made out for this, if it's really what you want to do, because you are going to stumble, you are going to get punched in the face, you are going to make those mistakes, and you either quit and go, oh, that wasn't for me, or you find a part of the industry that you really love, and then you say, okay, this is for me, I'm going to make it work, right? And that's where creative hustle came for me. Is people are like, Adam, you always just your team, you find a way. Because I wasn't properly trained. I didn't graduate from a prestigious film school. I did acting classes. I studied at William Esper Studios in New York, right? I came from like the front of the camera, learned that I was much better at producing and connecting the dots and putting out fires than I was at performing, which is a realization in itself that you have to really challenge yourself. Like, hey, is this for me? No, I realized like I'm not as talented as a lot of other people, but I realized what my talents were. So I'm like you though. I always said that about the Union. When it came out, it became this like cult classic, and it was rated like so much luck comes into things too, right? Like timing. Right. The Union came out right before, like right when it was releasing, is right when social media was starting to connect with people. And this is before, like, I remember going into meetings, like, yeah, we got a Facebook page and we've got like over 100,000 people, and distributors would laugh at me. They're like, oh, that's so cute. He has a Facebook page. Look at him. Aren't you cute? And then I was like, and then we did a follow-up film called The Culture High, which because of the demand from our online wanted us to do a follow-up. And I remember throwing that right back at the distributors. Like, yeah, it's so cute. We raised $250,000 in 42 days with that cute little Facebook page. And their faces were like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's a business tool. If you guys are not getting ahead of it, you better. And I wasn't even ready for the evolution of like Netflix streaming and how all that came about, but it caught everybody by storm, right?
Yeah, and let's not talk about distribution, because I'm sure you've got a couple stories about that.
Yeah.
Anybody on the show knows my history with distribution and what we've discussed on the show before. But anyway.
I've got funny, I'm sure you do too, but the funny stories there, it's nice when you know a little bit about it. And I can go in without saying names, but I remember we were fully financed on Inmate Number One, Danny Trejo's doc. And the way kind of our market we do in Canada is that like we only pre-sell Canada to get in production. Again, this is why our partners like it, where it's like, look, we can get a really healthy budget to start. I can pay you a fee up front, so I'm not wasting your time, right? I don't have the Last Dance Michael Jordan dollars. I can't give you 4 million, but I can give you something that's like, an average payday for an indie film, right? For a doc, but then you're a 50-50 partner. We'll mitigate 70 to 100% of the risk coming out of Canada. And then our international sales is split 50-50. If we can get all the grant money we hit, that's direct 50-50, other than maybe a few like, corporate overhead costs. Otherwise, we might have a gap of like 150 to 200,000 Canadian or 150,000 US. And then anything above that, we split in the MG that we get up front from either Netflix or. So everyone, when I always present this to the agents, the talent, they're like, man, this is awesome. So there was a distributor that came on with Danny, right? They were like, they wanted to come in early, and they were like, man, we love this. We think this is going to be a big one. And they gave me their sales projections, right? Which are always bullshit, right?
Oh, yes.
But here's the best part, brothers. They gave me like a high, a medium, and a low, right? So their low was like 2 million. Right? Their medium was like 5 to 7 million. Their high was like 8 to 11 million for doc. Right. And I was kind of like, okay,
that's pretty high.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Right. So it's like
it's not the last.
I don't know. Right.
It's not last.
Yeah. You go to the top 50 docs of all time. Like if you're in that above 10 range, you're in like the top 5, 10. Like it's crazy. Right.
That's Michael Moore Super Size Me world.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, right. Yeah. It's like putting lottery tickets in your business plan, being like, well, this lottery winner. Right. So I'm listening to a thing though. I've gone to a place where I'm listening, and then they go, yeah, we definitely think, it could hit here, but really, depending on how you guys deliver, it would be no less than, the mid-range, the low of 2 to 4 million in the mid-range. I'm like, oh, awesome. And then they gave me their waterfall. And this was ridiculous how payment would go in the back.
And just let everybody know, just because we're going to actually get into the conversation about the cool stuff they're doing, but this is just so valuable, this conversation right now. For everybody listening, a waterfall is how the money is distributed as it comes in, because it's like a waterfall of money, and then people start grabbing cash before it ever hits the bottom of the waterfall. So go ahead.
So now to summarize what I just said, so we already have the film financed out of Canada, right? We have a small gap of like 200,000 Canadian. We've got just over $900,000 budget, 800,000. I think it was 818 Canadian, or like 750 US. So then this guy we're meeting with shows me the waterfall. He's in top position. Obviously. The distributor is in second position. And then we're in third position. And I
Who
go
was
to
the guy?
him.
Who was the guy? Was it a sales rep?
He was a former NBC executive that was now got his own distribution company, right?
Oh, so it said personally gets money first, then the distribution company.
His company.
His
I don't want to name the company. His company.
Yeah.
Then the distribution company.
So another distribution company.
Yes. Because he was going to sell it to a distribution company, right? We were paying.
So middleman of a middleman. Got it. Okay.
And then us, right? And I remember going, wow, okay. When I saw the waterfall, looking at the numbers, I'm like, well, you guys must be putting up a significant MG or minimum guarantee to be putting yourself at the top of the waterfall because we're financed. We'd already shot, right? I'm like, why would you go 2 positions ahead of me? And he was like, well, no. He goes, you were able to mitigate all that money out of Canada. So that's why and I was like, so why the fuck would you get that benefit? That's me understanding the system. Why would you and the distributor get to benefit before I did? I'm like, you have to at least cover the gap that we have in here now in order for you to go to top position, or else why wouldn't our investors be? Like, I was like, but he was so used to taking advantage of filmmaking. He didn't even have answers for me when I had these. He's like, oh, well, you were able to get tax money and grant money. I'm like, yeah, that's my benefit, not yours. Yeah. Like, I was like,
if grandma died and gave me $1 million, well, your grandma died and you got $1 million. And
yeah, like it was so, I couldn't, and he really didn't have, I was like, well, and I'm going by your projections. You just said worst case scenario, 2 to 4 million. So I think a minimum guarantee of a quarter of that right now would be a great win. Like if worst case scenario, you think it's going to do 2 million, show me that right now with 500,000, right? Like that's only a quarter of the worst case scenario. Either way, you're making money. And he's like, well, no, that's not how it works. And I was like, well, no, that's how general business works. Like if those are the projections, you putting up 25% of the worst case projections is, I should ask for 50% actually, right? If it's like, I was like, I'm hedging the bet too. And then he squirmed and I was like, ultimately, I remember a guy's like, so you want to take that deal? I'm like, dude, I wouldn't take that deal if there's a gun to my head. I'd say pull the trigger. That's ridiculous. I'm like, our investors would go 2 positions below somebody else when we're already fully financed. I'm like, no, thanks. And sure enough, we just took it directly to Universal and did the sale ourselves. I'm like, why would I give you and a distributor positions ahead of that when I could go there myself? But these are things you learn.
Oh yeah,
way down the road, right? Like,
or you listen to the podcast.
Yeah, or you listen to the podcast. You can learn. That's man. See, I was always very fortunate, and this is where luck comes in. But I think that old term of "got to be good to be lucky" comes in because I was very lucky that really early on I met young sales agents or sales agents assistants that saw how sales agents and distributors were ripping filmmakers off, and kind of like me with the producers that I worked with, like, man, there's got to be a more ethical way that I can look after the filmmaker, but not fucking gouge them like some of these people are doing, right? So I kind of, when I was up and coming, I'd meet these guys, and a simple thing, I didn't even think it was a big thing, but I'd walk into the office and I'd know the assistants. I'd be like, what's up, Joe? What's up? Like, I knew them, right? I'd see them at film markets, and while the big wigs were busy, we'd always be hanging out. And they're like, Adam, you're one of the only filmmakers that like even remembers my name or takes time to know me. I'm like, what? I'm like, but dude, you're always looking after me and you're on emails. Like, yeah, you would think, but a lot of people are like, oh, you're not the decision maker, so screw them or screw this person, right? So, so we kind of built up together. So then when we were making films together, they're like, Adam, I've been the assistant for years. I've got all the contacts. I'm ready to go. I'll give you a better percentage. I won't gouge you. We've been homies. And I was like, dude, of course. And literally, Joe, my sales agent now at Upstream Flicks, I really call him, he's more my producing partner because we're way closer than, but he is technically a sales agent. But we are like family now, where he'll literally be like, Adam, this one is going to be a tough one to make money on. You might want to let it go. Or this one, I'm sure we can make money on. And I couldn't have done it without him. But that comes from being like, I didn't even, to me, it was just how I was raised. Like, you treat everyone with respect, whether he's the assistant or the decision maker. Like, I'm just a grinder too. Why would I talk to but I couldn't believe when he would tell me stories of people would walk in there and be like, yeah, I'm only going to talk to so-and-so. And I was you didn't.
Oh yeah.
No, you didn't. He's yeah. And I was like, really? So dude, we built it up together.
Listen, man, I'm an East Coast guy. I lived in LA for 13 years. And I just moved to Austin. So I'm in Austin now.
Oh, nice. Nice.
And I freaking I love it here. And I loved LA for the time I was there. But when you're raised in that environment, the ego gets out of control. People are not like, they'll walk over, they won't piss on you if you're on fire. It's really like, it's just a whole other world. So that you were outside of the system, outside of LA, probably the best thing that could have happened to you,
Well, that's, what, knowing that now, because I go to LA for work all the time and I enjoy it and I'm there.
It's fun.
I'll do Jones's, I'll go do the local hangout, and then I can't wait to get back home, right? I'm done with the traffic after a week. I'm done with I love how LA can just literally go, dude, what happened to you last night? They're like, oh, I flaked. I'm like, what's like, they just say they flaked. They're like, oh, I just flaked. I'm like, I remember first time they was said to me, I'm like, what, did you get sick or something? Like, no, I just flaked. I didn't feel like coming. I'm like, so you didn't text me or anything to be like, not coming?
You're not a human? You're not being a human being?
Yeah, I was like, you can't just not be a piece of shit and just say, hey, sorry, things came up, I'm not coming. Like,
I mean, have the decency to lie to me.
Yeah. Like,
have the decency to make a story up for me.
You just weren't worth me making the time to come out with. Like, I would have liked that better, right? Than you just saying I flaked. Okay.
Yeah, I would truly respect that answer. I'm like, dude, you're just not important enough for me to get out of bed. I was binging some Netflix, dude. I just couldn't. Yeah,
I was good. I was comfortable on my couch. I got tired. So I guess you saying that, but I do. That's why a lot of people always be like, why are you in Edmonton of Alberta of all places? Now, look, I'm not going to plan to retire here in Edmonton. The weather is not great, but
the winters are fantastic. I hear the winters are great.
It's spectacular. If you love Arctic cold for 10 months out of the year, it's mid-April and we had snow today. So
with the global warming happening, dude, you're going to have some really good real estate in about 10, 15 years.
We're going to be good. Global warming was good to us before this winter. It was good until this winter. It has not been good to us.
So listen, all right. So first of all, thank you so much for that amazing conversation about the business. But it was great, man. It was great. That's why I love having conversations like this, because you just have no idea where things are going to go. And I could keep talking about that stuff for another hour. Maybe I'll have you back on the show just to talk about the realities of the business.
Absolutely, dude. We got a spinning top. You get me going. There's lots we can get into there. Happy to share and help your listeners.
I appreciate that very much, brother. Now, the reason I wanted to get you on the show is because you've got something called Creative Hustler Key.
Yes.
Tell me about what Creative Hustler Key is and this new kind of way of what you're doing with it.
Yeah. So this is a great segue into, kind of what we were just talking about, is that my partner came to me and was like, Adam, look, we need to get into Web3 and the NFT space. And I like many other people, was like, oh man, NFTs, I don't get it. It was a digital art and this and that. He's like, listen, Adam, that is just step one of the evolution of this technology and all the things it can be used for. And again, I kind of put it off, and he was doing a ton of research and getting into it and looking at how we can have value. And I was like, okay. And then when all the distribution, like Universal, Netflix, when everybody started putting these into their contracts, right, that they now started wanting these rights and they want to start having NFTs and Web3, I was like, okay, they don't want to make the same mistake that Netflix, when everybody said streaming will never be a thing. Digital in all the theaters, not going to happen. Social media, that's for kids. We're never going to use it in the film industry, right? Well, all those things happened and overtook the industry, right? Everybody now, you have to fight for those rights now, whereas just a year ago, nobody could give a shit. They were all available. So then as Shane kept bringing, he's like, listen, Adam, let's not just make artwork. You and our team have always been great at when young filmmakers reach out, you're always willing to help. You're a mentor and Tell a Story Hive. You speak at panels. And then afterwards at the panels, everyone comes running up to you because they're like, Adam, I've never met any in the industry so candid, willing to share budgets and do all these things. Why don't we take that one step further where we make a Creative Hustler Key, which has the art element, the thing that all the NFTs do, right? Which pays homage to all our films. We did all these Easter egg things like, can you point out? And people were like, it was really cool what the designer came up with. There's like every one of our docs, there's like a little character, even us were digitized and put in them. And where can you find us? But we wanted to add that utility and community. That's where, for me, as a bit of an older vintage like yourself, or a more legacy vintage, if that's some more cool words, right? Is like, how can you add a practicality, something that like I can touch and make realization of in addition to the artwork? And when Shane came with me with that, I was like, dude, now that's what I want to get into. He's like, Adam, how about everybody that has a Creative Hustler Key? Like, you already do this for everybody for free, but how about now the people that have it, you'll give them contacts to like people at Netflix and Super Channel. You'll give them a little bit more time because they've been part of your community. I was like, I love it. He's like, and then if they get 3 and become a tri-key holder, you'll literally do introductions to those people. And I was like, hey, they've got a project you think is worthy of going in front of Netflix. You'll actually say, hey, got this great guy. He's part of our team. you guys should have at her, right? And not ask for anything, right? And I was like, now you've got something that I'd be willing to get into. So we reached out to all the local film communities in our province, which is AMPIA, the Alberta Media Association, and ESIO, the Edmonton Screen Industry Office. We said, look, we'll give you a couple to give to your brightest students, or you can do a competition to give out, because when you come out of these film institutions, a lot of the time, you've learned you don't really know what it's like to be on a production. You've done the mock ones and you've done the things, but you haven't really gotten to the nitty gritty like you and me talked about, like where you really learn. So I'm like, why don't we fast track you where you'll be right in our community? You want to reach out to me, my co-founders, and say, Adam, like, I'm working on this project. Do you know anybody at Super Channel? Absolutely. I'll connect you, right? Here's what you're going to run into. Let me see your budget. Your financing's wrong. I'll show you how to do it through the Alberta model or through the BC model. Connect you to all those sides, kind of doing what the DG, like a lot of these guilds are supposed to do, but they're so big now that and that's why fitting the NFT model, we kept it very limited. There's only going to ever be 999 and there's only going to ever be 333 tri-key holders, right? Because you can combine your other ones for a tri-key, all three of the different worlds, because we have chaos, competition, and the three different worlds that you can combine into a tri-key. We wanted to make it ultra selective because obviously we don't have enough time to do this. We don't want 5,000 or 6,000. It's not about a cash grab for us or what the mint price is going to be. It's about creating a great community that.
So I didn't want to cut you off because I understand every single word you're saying, but a lot of people listening don't even know what an NFT is, don't understand what blockchain is, don't understand what mint is.
I'm starting to get, I just got savvy to those. That's why I'm thinking I can throw out that lingo because I know all that stuff.
So,
right?
All right. So can you just really quickly, what is an NFT for those who don't know?
So an NFT is a non-fungible token, which is backed by the blockchain, right? And where this technology is going to be very valuable for all us creators, if you're someone that's like, I don't get it. And the art pieces, the digital art pieces, I too was like, someone's like, okay, it's digitally, I could take a photo of it. I can get, when you back things by the blockchain, with all the problems we're having with piracy, with films and all these things, is as this technology continues to evolve, this is how you'll be able to secure it in a better way, where you'll be able to prevent better privacy or piracy issues and stuff like that. Like indie guys like us get killed by piracy the most, right? When people are like, who cares? And I was like, dude, 1,000 downloads for us is like the difference of a distributor wanting to sign us again or not, right? Like the Marvels and stuff, yeah, they can afford it. Us guys, like nothing's more painful when somebody rips off your thing and then they tweet at it too. They're like, oh yeah, I pulled this off of VPN or whatever. You're like, dude, killing me. Like,
dude, my last feature was booted in 9 hours. It's 9 hours. 9 hours. It was already up on the board. So it was just like, wow.
So these are where like the technology, that's where when my partner brought it up, and he does a great analogy. He's like, look, we all have smartphones nowadays, right? We know how much they make our life better, but how many of us actually understand how they operate? I'd say less than 1%, right? Probably very few, right? And that's kind of where Web3 and non-fungible tokens and things being on the blockchain are at. Like, this came up recently with a friend of mine my wife was trying to redo her resume and she couldn't get her diploma, right? She's trying to call her old school and nobody's answering. And I was like, wouldn't it be great if it's just on the blockchain and you could just log in and pull it up and it's there for a lifetime, right? Like these are where the practicalities in this technology, whether we want to accept it, which was presented to me, like it's like social media, it's like streaming for movies, it's coming. Whether you're ready for it or not.
It's like the internet in 94.
Exactly.
Because everybody was like,
people thought internet was going to be a fad, right?
Dude, do you remember those like those commercials or like, what is this email? What is that? And you hear that the struggle was real, brother. The struggle was real back then. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And look, I've had probably about 4 or 5 episodes dedicated to NFTs, blockchains in this space and what people are doing. And I think we have a lot of information about that stuff on the website. If you guys wanted to learn more about blockchain, that it's specifically for the film business, because there's so much, there's so many blockchains. There's so much. Then you start getting into crypto, and which blockchain are you on? Are you on Ethereum? Are you on Cosmos? Are you on something else? And then like, I created my own blockchain. Well, what's that about? So you're on Ethereum, right? Are you on Ethereum?
We're on Ethereum. We're going with that, but we also created a fiat system because we know a lot of people from the sports stocks we did are big memorabilia collectors, right? And this is the Creative Hustler Key is only phase 1, right? Then we've got phase 2, and we're already in talks with Grant Fuhrer about doing like a custom design mask thing with like an iconic artist and him. And then, you know, if you got some of the ultra rare masks, we would do an in-person screening with Grant himself, the artist, and you'd be able to forge 3 copies that you'd be able to make. You could put on the blockchain that you could then sell as a collector and do as your own. We're talking with BizBing about this. We're talking about Dolph with this, so that we can always engage in the community, you know, and offer this utility and community outside of just a digital art piece, right? And that's also what the Creative Hustler Key gets you, is that, you know, we're going to do drops where you get the chance to be on set for a day. So you can come and be with us with Doug, because a lot of people... All right, a lot of people now, I'll let you go. Hold that thought. But like at dinner parties now, people are always, especially I'm in Alberta, I'm in an oil state like you are, a province, right? Where a lot of people have great paying jobs, but fucking hate what they do, right? Where they have anxiety on Sunday, knowing they have to go to work on Monday, right? So when it comes up and people ask what I do and they see the passion and they see that we're like, man, you're traveling to Sweden with Dolph and you got to interview Arnold. I'm like, so now we're giving you the ability where you could do that. You can have that experience by being a creative key. If you're a tri-key holder, you'll win those chances. We'll do 1 or 2 trips a year where you'll get to be a producer for a day. You'll get to come on set. You're automatically VIP entered into all of our red carpet premieres and all of our after parties. You will also get to be in a community. Like that's what we wanted to build. This is when my partner brought this to me. I'm like, that I can get behind, right? Where we're helping filmmakers, we're providing a community in addition to the cool artwork and collectibles that we know. Like a lot of people, when we did Ice Guardians, or we did Making Coco, people wanted the signed poster by Grant and they wanted to be there with him that night and they wanted those experiences. So this was just the next logical step, but then you can add ownership to that too, right? Where not only you're getting to be involved in this, you can have ownership in the artwork. You can own some of the new NFTs that we're going to be having coming down the future. And that's where I was like, okay, you got me. I'm in. Let's expand.
So for people listening, I'm gonna translate everything you just said.
Sure. It's easy. I know I'm fast. I'm like I see I'm passionate.
No, this is great. So translation is an NFT is basically a digital baseball card or comic book. Let's just put it. That's for people.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
It's a digital version of that. There's only one of them. You could throw that up on something called the blockchain. And if you want to know about blockchain, you have to go just type of blockchain.
That's why I couldn't even explain that to you that much. You got to do some research on that.
Yeah, do some research on blockchain. But when you sell an NFT, you can also sell experiences or hard products or real world products along with that. So let's say there's a digital MMA card of Bispin. Let's just throw that out there, right? And then if you buy that NFT, then you can also get an autographed poster. And if you buy 2 or 3 of them, then you could you can go to a screening with him, things like that. So now you're selling experiences with practical products and digital all through the NFT. And once it's purchased, it goes on the blockchain where now it lives forever. And you can resell that. I'm not sure you can resell the experience or the physical products, but you might want to be able to sell the physical products. That's up to you.
We're making it so the physical products we make you can sell, and they'll be chipped so that they can still be on the blockchain. So that if you want to do that, you can do that. The experiences, that's something we're figuring out. We don't really maybe you could gift it to another Creative Hustler key holder, but we don't really want this. We're hoping that the people that buy these, we're not worried for ours as much. Of course, we know it's going to be great art. We know it's going to have value, but it's less about trying to just get 5 times what you paid for it and sell it. It's more about the community and the utility and what we're going to be providing afterwards. The NFTs that are coming down the road, like the partnership with Grant Fuhr and those ones, if some of the artists we're reaching out to come on board, definitely those will be ones that'll be, really, really valuable and probably be 2, 5x, 10x times, especially if you get the ultra rare. But for the Creative Hustler Key, it's much more about the community and utility. So we're still working out the fine tuning. If someone's actually like, hey, I want to give this to somebody else, I think they'd benefit from it more. I kind of love that spirit. So I'm sure we would honor something like that as long as they're also a Creative Hustler key holder. As far as selling the experience, I don't think we want to do that.
10 years down the line, you can't sell the experience. The experience is over.
But we want you to be there. If your key gets picked and you're the one that gets to come on set with Dolph for a day, we'd say, oh, we'd love to give this. If you're in the film community here in Alberta and they're like, look, I have someone that's the biggest Dolph fan. He'd benefit from this more than me. Great. We can make that work. But you putting that experience up for sale, we probably not allow that, because that
right.
isn't in the ethos of what we're trying to provide.
Right, exactly. And then once you buy that NFT, you can then resell it. But the great thing about NFTs is that once you resell it, a portion of that sale goes back to the original creator of the NFT. So if I buy it for $100 and I go sell it for $10,000,
you still get a percentage.
Yeah, you as whoever created the NFT still gets a 10%. Generally, it's 10% for life. For life. So as long as in other words, if I got a baseball card for 5 cents back in our vintage legacy days,
vintage,
our vintage, and then all of a sudden that baseball player blows up and it's worth $1 million, I can sell it, and then someone 5 years from then sells it for $10 million. The original baseball player or the company who created that card does not benefit from it. So, and it's not the company. I'm not as worried about the company. I'm not as worried about the company. Like, I don't care about Topps not getting a piece of it. Yeah. Screw them, because their gum sucks. But
true story.
But if the artist or celebrity or athlete is the one created them, they can benefit in perpetuity from any future sales based on what value they bring. So imagine if you would have gotten a Michael Jordan NFT in '85.
No, and that's why every single sports collectible company, they are all getting on it. That's where I'm starting to see the wheels moving, just like social media before it became a regular business practice, or when Netflix got streaming rights from everybody because nobody thought streaming was going to be a thing, right? They gave it away. Yeah, Disney. They were like streaming. Nobody's gonna want that, right?
Here, take these for 5 years. Take them for 5 years.
How much? For 10 grand. Take it as much as you want. Then Transformers was one of their big titles they got, and they got screened. Then they saw it. This is when Netflix started hiding their numbers. They're like, what? Thing's been viewed 70 million times or something. And they're like, well, you gave us the streaming rights. We can screen as many times as we want. So then they kiboshed it. But then they transitioned into making sure they were doing their own content, right? So which is
the only way they could survive. That's the only way they could survive. No, right? It's fascinating. It's really fast. So how much is a creative hustler key?
So it's going to be 0.13 ETH, or roughly 500 Canadian dollars, right? And then so if you get 3, then you can get, like I said, the try key, which is where you'll get free drops into like just like kind of Clone X did and Artifact did, where they're a big NFT company that sold to Nike. Like when they did their launch, it was like Michael Jordan, Converse, Nike, and Artifact, right? So that's another thing to say, like how big these are getting is that, Nike's made 3 big acquisitions, one of them being an NFT company, that we're doing the same kind of model where if you're one of those holders, when we do like the Grant Fuhr drop, or we do something with one of these other artists, you'll get a free drop into your wallet just because you've held a try key, right? In addition to the red carpet bonuses and all those things, is we really want you to hang on to them so that there's value. We want to continue to offer value, as other things come up, right? Whether it's the red carpet events, be on set for a day, contacts of ours that we have, our Rolodex will not only just introduce you, or we'll not just give them to you, we'll introduce you and say, hey, this person's part of the Creative Hustler community. I'll introduce you to all the contacts that I have and have worked with. That will all come as part of having a try key.
So in the future for independent filmmakers, before I ask that question, it sounds like you're building a community, and the key is almost like a membership into that community of NFTs and building it up. But since you're working with such high profile actors, athletes, and subject matter from your docs, you're able to partner with them in a way that and provide value to the community that not a lot of people are able to do. Is that fair statement?
We saw. Yeah, that's what we really saw value. Like even recently it was interesting because like when Bisbing came out, right, we reached out to all of the other guys. So Dolph shared the Bisbing trailer on his thing, and Danny Trejo shared it on his, and all these guys, because we're like, look, they scratched your back when your trailer came out, you do the same. And again, it's different than scripted films because their docs are all, everybody, when they're happy with the finished doc, they want people to share their story. They're hoping it inspires people and gives a good message, right? Like, so we constantly are leaning on each other. So as the next logical step is like, man, if we already have this kind of community built in, why don't we? Because again, we're always like, look, let's be 50-50 partners. We're not trying to say like, yeah, we're doing part of the heavy lifting by creating the back end of the blockchain and the NFT and whatever artwork we're going to do. But, we're splitting it 3 ways. If we do one with Danny, it'll be like Danny, the artist we work with, and us, right? Split equally, all go there. Like, we're not trying to be like, well, 90% us, like, So, and you know, and everyone we worked with has already experienced this from the films we've done. So they're like, man, totally open to proposal, like bring it our way, right? We're looking forward to it. In addition, so that's just expanding on the community, not only with the talent, but also the film community that we want to give back to them, right? Like I know how hard it was when I was hustling, and I wish, you know, you probably had this too, when you met that one great producer or that DOP or someone that really like helped you and was like, man, here's how you do your budget. You should really go to them with your project. I think it'd be like, they were there wasn't a lot of them, but when you found, or that diamond in the rough, and say not a dime a dozen, when you found them, I remember being like, man, thank you so much. Like your information helped so much, where we're like, and then we know, then, you know, as this creative hustler key keeps evolving, we're hoping that maybe down the road, the way the technology goes, that we can bypass distribution altogether. If the community gets big enough and everybody's making money on the NFTs, then we can say, hey guys, are you interested in this subject matter? Why don't we all we'll sell NFTs to fund it and get things together, and then we'll just release it for free. Right? We'll just say, hey, we all funded it with the collectibles and everything and the pieces of the moments that we want to sell. We're just going to give it, because screw going to some decision maker that's sitting there going, I don't know if you have enough females or you don't have enough Christians in there or things that they're going to determine make what they think is going to make your project sell, right? Where it's like, screw it. No, like I remember that was something with Danny's project that drove us crazy. The critics are like, they missed a real opportunity to talk about the hardships of the Latino community and what Danny went through. I'm like, but that wasn't Danny's story. That's not what he wanted to tell. Why would we force that narrative that you think we missed when that wasn't Danny's story? I was like, how dare you tell Danny? Or like one of them said that he was too macho and grandizing when he talked about surviving in prison. I'm like, that's what it takes to fucking survive in prison. I'm like, you want to tell him that he was too macho in prison? Like, oh my God. Like, I'm like, but these are the people that dictate what projects we can see on television these days. So they're like, no, Danny's a little too macho for me. I don't like it. And I was like, well, he's actually, if you actually paid attention to the film, he's super charming and funny, right?
Super sweet. Yeah.
He actually had to break down that macho. I like this also made me, I'm like, did you actually watch the fucking film? Because he talked about having to create that when he was in prison, but then he talks about having to break that down when he got out of prison and be welcoming. I was like, but that's critics for you. We're kind of like, what are you talking about?
Because people were terrified of him on set because he has that look. He had that look, that killer look that I mean, I don't know if you know that or not, but my first book was about me almost making a movie with the mafia when I was
really
26.
No, I didn't know that.
I'll tell you all about it after we get off. But I know what it's like to look into a killer's eyes, and there's a thing that's there that's terrifying even when they're not being scary. Yes. And Danny had lived that way for so long that he just scared that. And actors and movie folk, they're brittle. Let's just put it brittle.
They're trying to be like, well, that's like the famous part that Danny tells when he came onto the movies, right? He went because everything good that happened to him is a direct result of helping somebody else, right? And he can narrow that down to like taking garbages out when he first got out of prison. And he went to go help a sponsor because he's still a recovery sponsor and addict. He's been sober for 50 years. And he went to help somebody and it was middle of the night and he wound up on a movie set. And he said, all these guys were doing push-ups and trying to look hard. And they had these fake tattoos. And like, does this make me look tough? And Danny was like, yeah, you be my bitch in prison, man. But sure, you look hardcore, right? And like, just because, like you said, he just came with a natural, he'd done this. And then someone came up to him right away and they're like, wow, like, can you be an extra? And he was like, an extra what? And they're like, an extra in a movie. And he's like, what do you need me to do? They're like, could you look like a convict? And he just served 10 years. So he's like, I think I can make that work. Right. Yeah. And
takes off his shirt.
Yeah. And that's what when they put the blues on him for like this thing, because they were meant to play San Quentin where he served time. And then he's like, you guys don't know it, but these blues, they fit just right on me. Right. Where just a natural and right away, of course, and the director saw him and was like, and he makes jokes where they're like doing the, the squares, like the frame. And Danny was like whispering to his buddies, like, I don't know what gang sign that is. That's a new one. What is that? Right. And they're like, no, that's like a movie frame. Right. And he's like, oh, and then they're like, you be in my movie. Cause he was so natural because he's like, he lived it. But there's a part that didn't make it into the film that he talked about that really resonated with me, that he said, I had to untrain. Like I was involved in several prison riots, one that almost got him sent to the gas chamber, right? When he's like, when you're staring across the yard and there's about to be a prison riot, you try to look so intimidating that when the crowds go together and fight each other, that they're like, oh, I'm going to go to the guy next to him because that guy looks like he would bite my ear off and enjoy it, right? Where he's like, so yes, when I came out, I didn't even realize at times that I had that look of protection, because in prison, you can't show weakness. I'd always look like I kill anyone, anytime, don't fuck with me, right? So he's like, yeah, it took years when I'd come out, and you'll see it now. He's 75 years old. When people come, he always like sparks himself up to where he exhausts himself, because when you introduce, he'd be like, hey, nice to meet you. Hey, nice to meet you. Because he's trying to deflect all the time that like he's not that guy anymore. In fact, I find he's really a big child now, because he didn't get much of a childhood, right? Because he was in and out of juvie when he was young, and he was in prison very young, that he's like a big joker and always making fun. And you're really like, man, like I know in his eyes, if it went serious, like you'd want to be the only guy you're scared of is him. But he's such a big kidder and joker now that like he really was just a treat to work with.
It was so funny because in the movie that he was on the set of Con Air.
Yes.
Con Air, there was so much machismo and testosterone, so much testosterone on that set. I could only imagine. And everybody was on the set, like while they were setting something up, talking about like all the tough times and who's toughest, and like, oh, I went through this or that. And Nick Cage stands up and says, you guys can say whatever the hell you want. The only guy I'm scared of here is Danny. And
Danny was over to the side.
And Danny wasn't saying anything. And Danny's been quiet in the corner. He's like, mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Danny was like, why me, man? Why are you picking on me? They're
well, I didn't know. Yeah. Like, we know. No, by the way, I got to see Bispin and Danny's movie. And dude, I love the way you shoot the docs. It's there because I've seen a million docs, and I've seen a million docs about, and actually there's been docs on Danny before. I've seen them. There's been many, but yours, it's so cinematic in the way you do things. They're very well done, man. Just not that you need me to tell you that, but it's always great to hear from people in the industry. It's nice to get, that's what I always say about the awards, right? You don't do it for the awards, but it is nice to get recognized by your peers every once in a while, because we've all been through the trenches, right? Where you're eating dirt for years and you're getting, so it's always nice to hear that, because I know we put a lot of emphasis in that. Like there is, I will say, for lack of better terms, I don't like to like say the Scorgie brand, but there is a quality that is like, it's why people are now coming to us. They're like, man, these guys are out of Canada. They're ethical in their business. They treat you right. They care about the story. They're passionate about it. But of course, there has to be a quality there. If we had all those other elements, but we weren't delivering on the quality, we wouldn't continue to be working. So, but I really do appreciate that, because we put so much into like always making sure that our lenses and like we're trying to make it feel more like a movie than it is. Although it is a doc, we try to shoot it very, very cinematic. Yeah, the interviews, the interview setups, the sets where the interviews are set up, the B-roll that you shoot. That I know it's all the stuff that you shoot. It was just really well. I was really impressed with how well it was put together, man.
Thank you, because we put a ton of effort into that, to the point where like a lot of times when we're setting up the interviews, we're like, when it's a big high profile people, they're like, oh yeah, they just think they're like, oh, come and pop a camera. We're like, so we need access like 4 hours before, right? And they're like, 4 hours, and we're like, well, like our lighting takes 2.5 hours, and we want to work on any problems.
It's lit like a movie. It's lit like a movie set.
And then they, they always respect it once they hear it. But I'm like, look, we don't need the talent there. We just need access to the location, right? So if you don't want it at your house and you want us to get a studio, like we'll do that. And then that part always drives me crazy. Then the directors will be like, we'll provide them like 35 locations. Like, I'm not sure if any of those are going to work. I'm like, dude, you got to pick one here. Like, we only have so much we can work. Like, we're trying to get it where there's no sound issues and we can control the lighting, and like,
it looks great, but it's underneath the subway. Underneath the subway. It's underneath the subway. Is that going to be a problem? It looks great though. Is it going to be a problem though?
We've had that before, actually.
I'm sure. Of course we have. Of course you have. So with the future of NFTs, how can NFTs help you raise money for your film?
So this is an interesting one where we're really looking, like, again, that's kind of phase 4 for us right now, where basically any money we make off the Creative Hustler key, we're planning to just put right into the experiences in the community, right? If you're investing in us, we want to invest this right back in you. This is why we have the Discord and everything, where for those that don't know Discord, I was new to this. It is another app, God forbid, another one on your phone. It's kind of like Reddit on your phone, but you can get direct in contact with anybody from our film team. Me and my co-founder, mainly Shane, were the ones that answer, where if you have a question, you want to say like, hey, Adam, like, how did you put your financing together for In May? Would you mind? No problem. I'll get your email. I'll send you budgets. I'd like, as soon as you're in the Discord, I consider that a community where I'll reach out to you and communicate as best I can. Now, I am a father of 3, and that I don't know, not maybe that instant, but it will be within a day. But where we think this can go, and we're still learning, is that, you know, if the community comes big enough and we keep investing into it and we do these things, and then we can do these drops, like we can do the custom Grand Pure masks, maybe like Bisbing gloves and things like that, where we can say, look, let's sell you an item and an NFT where you can make money off of it. It'll be worth more than you paid for it, because we're partnering with all these big parties that will make it like opening a Wayne Gretzky rookie card for the first time, right? That we can take the money from that and say, hey, look, like now that you've bought the NFTs for this space, whether it be like somebody like Dolph or Bisbing or somebody that has built an audience, well, now we have the funds to do it. We're just going to go make the movie and then we'll release it to our community, right? Like we already have the money through making it through the NFTs, that we can do it that way and say, look, distributors don't want to do it, or they want to have too many of their greasy fingers on how they want to release it and do all that. Well, we can do it ourselves. And then we've done, like, I've kind of done this where the festival thing's kind of an interesting thing for me, where unless it's the real top tier festivals, which help the sale of your film.
Correct.
A lot of times now when people are like, hey, want to come to the festival? I'm like, dude, I know how to sell it. We haven't not had a sellout like before COVID. Everything of our things is sold out and I've made thousands of dollars, where I'm kind of like, okay, the film festival gives me $150 or maybe 500, where I can sell it out and we could bring the talent and we could make 20 grand in one night and making an experience that you don't want to miss. That, you know, why do I want to give that away? So we can then say, hey, we can go to our community. And this is where we'd want community voting and stuff too. Be like, how do you guys think we should release it? We were thinking about doing, you know, one solely for all of our members of the Scorgie community. Let's throw a big party. Let's invite the talent to do a Q&A, where we could do all that in-house and keep the profits and everything within our community, rather than saying, okay, let's just give it away to a distributor that's going to overcharge, overmarket, overspend, and we're never going to get out of the hole. So that's the long game goal, right? And we don't have everything. I'm not going to lie to the audience and say, I have all that figured out right now, right? But that's where we see the evolution of NFTs in the film world, where that's where it can get, right? It was that we're all sick of the distributors and people telling us what's going to work, what's not going to work, and having to, you know, if you deal in the scripted world, you know, where they're like, no, you need this actor. And you're like, no, but this actor's perfect, right? Like this guy, because they were on Twilight, is going to sell more. So we have to put them, even though they're not perfect. Not to diss Twilight. My kids love it, but you could
absolutely diss Twilight. It's okay.
It's like, but that's where for me, just like when people said crowdfunding would never work or this would never, that's where I see the long-term coming, is that as this constantly evolves and the blockchain and cryptocurrency and NFTs are able to allow ownership, as well as just like, someone said it perfectly, like Web 1 was reading, Web 2 was interacting, and Web 3 allows ownership, right? Where then it's secured by the blockchain, allows ownership, because that's where we ultimately see that it could go, right? It's not there yet. No one's done it yet. But I definitely think, just like when we did crowdfunding and nobody understood it before crowdfunding was a term, when we built social media pages before those were like regular business tools, I definitely see the practicality coming. Especially, I see it in the doc space. I don't know specifically. I'm sure it could work in the scripted world too. I just don't know that world as well. But I've just seen how, like, when we did Bisbing's premiere in Manchester, like it was funny because Universal set it up with the Manchester Film Festival. And originally they put it in one of their modest theaters in the UK, right? Well, Bisbing posted one thing, it sold out like instantly. So then they're like, oh shit, well, we need to put more. So then they put in a bigger theater. Then they upped the ticket prices and put it in a bigger theater, right? Because we ended up selling out the biggest theater they had, and there was not a empty seat, right? Because Bisbing was going to be there doing the Q&A and he is so good about every photo, every person that wants to talk to him. Like, the movie started half an hour late because everybody wanted photos. And it was funny because I knew the moment he came in, because they had this great red carpet media and they had us all lined up, the director and myself and the other producers, to do questions and interviews. And all of a sudden there's this big crowd in front of us taking, and then all of a sudden I can see them all just go over here. And there's like the two people interviewing me left. And I was like, oh, Bisbing must have come through the doors, right? Because all of a sudden they were like, whoa, over here, which was awesome, as it should be. It's about him. It was nice to only have to do those interviews. Normally me and the director are doing more, but when the talent's there, who needs us? We're not as important. But, right. You know, even that, seeing how the theater, like, you could do that where we could go on tour with Bisbing. And I know if his schedule, like, it would sell out. He even did just like a kind of comedy behind the cage, it's called. And he toured all over. It sold out in the biggest venues all over the UK, where you're kind of like, how hard is that as a producer? You're like, well, I can call venues, I can set up insurance and fire, and that's what I have to do for a movie. right? Like that's all. And distributors now, because of streaming, they've gotten so lazy where a lot of them are like, no, we're just going to put on platforms. Like they'll want those rights from you, but they won't do anything with them, right? They'll be like, we want all the rights. And then, so we're in a fortunate position because again, the talent is our partner. We tell them that. We say, hey, like if you want all the promotion, like, are you going to do anything with the theatrical rights? Well, no, well, then we're going to take those back, right? Are you going to do anything with the pay-per-view vote things? No. Okay, well, then we're going to take those back, right? If you're not going to use them, we're not going to include them in the sale because we know we're creative hustlers. We'll do it ourselves. We'll work with the talent. We'll put good money in his pocket, good money in our pocket, and we'll make life experiences that everybody's like, man, like that was one of the coolest things. All the people that came to Manchester, they're like, dude, I drove 3 hours. Like, I'm so glad that is the best movie experience. Like, imagine you watch Bisping, that emotional roller coaster and the real life Rocky that accomplished become a world champion with one fucking eye. And then he's there, he's crying. Like he's so emotional now. Like it's funny because he's like, I watch this and I look back and I'm like, I was crazy. I can't believe I did all that shit because he's retired. He's comfortably retired. He's doing very well.
He's doing movies now. Yeah, he's doing movies now.
Oh yeah. And every time he saw his kids on screen, he was crying. And then even for the talent, a lot of times, like sure, they've seen the rough cut, but to watch an audience and they see all these people talking about
stories, their life.
Oh, Bisping was an emotional wreck that night, right? And he was like, he kept crying and tried to be, and everyone in the theater, like, they're like, man, they're like, he got 2 standing ovations, one when the movie ended and one when the Q&A ended. And I've been to Sundance and South by Southwest, and I've been there where, they're sold out and then the actors come on and they talk. And, most of the audience will stay, but a lot will leave. I am not exaggerating that not a person left for that Q&A. 405-seat theater. One guy got up like 20 minutes into the Q&A and went to walk out. And Bisping joked. He's like, finally, a guy that's sick of my face and my voice. And the guy's like, no, mate, I just got to go take a piss and I'll be right back. Right. Like, and it was like... Like, we're just figuring that like down the road, it's like, okay, well, we already know how to do that. Like I can call a theater, I can get insurance, I can line up the talent. They're a 50-50 partner. Man. If distributors don't want to take us, right, like we can do this with our NFT community, provide ownership to our audience as well, where, they'll have an NFT and then they can forge it, make it real, come meet Bisping, get it signed, make it one of a kind, do all those kind of things where it's like, look, we can bypass the distributor that overcharges for marketing and publicity and all this shit, right? That just... I don't want to talk about which distributor, but recently we had a film where we did great this last quarter, but somehow, of course, their costs were more than the quarter. We're like, what?
Shocking.
It's been out for 2 years. Like, what the fuck are you spending marketing? And then miscellaneous charges of $70,000. I'm like, what the fuck is that? 70,000 in miscellaneous.
They're just such thieves, man. They're just such thieves.
So this is where, when my partner really kind of broke it down to me, Shane Fennessy, who wasn't on today, my co-founder, when he was like, Adam, that's the long-term goal. In addition to providing, like, we can do some really cool collectibles. We can offer the film community and the utility part of it. I was like, okay, I will put my name and back that completely because just like we did with the Kickstarter campaign, raising $250,000, we satisfied all our backers there. We've always been good at connecting with our community and writing back. That's how I didn't even know that's like a business tool, but when I was first doing our first films and just responding to everybody that would reach out through Facebook and Instagram, always reaching out. Even the negative people early on, I don't reply to the negative people now. When people hate on it, I just ignore them.
Yeah.
But when you start and you first get that, you put so much emphasis. It's like your 4-year-old. It's like there's a movie, our first movie took 4 years. And then people are like, it's stupid. And you're like, what? And you go on there, but you learn, you're like, dude, that's like, it's sad because they need that attention that you don't waste your time. Take the time to respond to the nice people that took time to reply to you. So negative. And then as I thought I matured and evolved, I would just respond with when people are like, your movie sucked. I'm like, thank you for tuning in. They're like, no, I didn't like your movie. I'm like, still, thank you for tuning in. They're like, fuck you. I didn't like your movie. You're like, that's fine. Yeah.
Because you just can't let it go, Adam. You just can't.
I couldn't let it go. Now I can. Now I finally. Now that I have gray hair,
are you enlightened? Are you enlightened now? Have you transcended?
Yes, I think I have quite sophisticated now as I'm in the legacy market, that I'm able to just let that one go under the rug.
Oh my God! My first film came out, man. I every single negative review. Son of a
yeah.
What are you talking about?
Attention to the opening.
I just days of life that I will never get back from wasting my time on bitter people, and angry bitter people. But it's all good. I have to ask you a question, man. Do you with a movie like, let's say Trejo, right? With Danny Trejo's movie, I'm assuming you're going to create some cool like Trejo Tacos NFTs or something, or something like that. The thing that's cool about it is that, yeah, there's a time limit. I mean, there's an expiration date, quote unquote, on docs. Generally speaking, on films, you know, things that were around 10 years ago, you know, even things that won Oscars, you're not going back very often and go see them. There is a time limit.
Yeah.
But with the NFT aspect of it, you could arguably continue to release collectibles on the because a person doesn't have the expiration date, you know, but, you know, so in 5 years, Bispin's still going to be Bispin. Yep. In 5 years, Danny, God willing, will still be Danny. Yeah. You know, and Dolph will still be Dolph, and all of those things. So you can constantly almost continue to build that ecosystem of collectibles and other things and experiences with that talent, that you could partner with them to almost be the exclusive place where the NFTs for them are built, purely because you've built that environment up, you've built that trust up, you're handling all the heavy lifting for them, and you have the audience as well, that not only their audience, but the other audiences that you've built together. So you got Danny's, Bispin, and Dolph, let's say. So then when Danny comes out, Dolph's people are going to want to get Danny. Bispin's people like that, because you're all within the same kind of world. It's not like you're doing a ballet dancer and a hockey player. You're doing everything that sits in the world. So it's a very, that's the way I see it for my. Yeah, no, you hit the nail. That's when my producing partner, Shane, brought it to me. He's like, Adam, we're in such a great ecosystem, and we're forever, when you do the biodoc for them, like even years on, you are like forever connected to them. Like people, I'll always just get random stories from a friend, be like, look, I saw this Danny Trejo article. I'm like, that's cool. Yeah, there's lots of articles, because I'm associated with him now, right? And then I'm associated with Grant Fuhr, and I'm associated with, like, I just got a text while we were on here saying, hey, Adam, can Grant still play? Like, we're trying to do a charity game. Do you think we could suit him up and get stuff like that? Like, we're forever associated. And like all the time, like my business was always just the film. So like any business that came to these guys, I would just throw it to them, like a Super Bowl commercial. The NFL reached out to me because of Danny. And I was like, here, I'll just connect you with Gloria. Like I like his manager. I'm like, they didn't just reach out to Gloria. Yeah. Like I was like, I don't have it. It's like, sure, just reach out there. Right. So we are forever connected. And as we constantly take care of our teams, like we do feel it's a family, and you build a bit more of that. Like kind of, we mentioned earlier in the podcast, there is a special connection built with the doc, as you're doing their story, and you're in a way, not that they do it for brand, but when you tell the story right and you inspire people, it only helps them in their other things, right? So when you say, look, we're going to bring this, we're going to do a continuation, we're going to do an inmate shoe, right? Because like for Danny, because his number at the beginning of the doc, he says, my number was B948, because I know actually Artifact, they're looking at doing something like that, because Universal didn't lock up the NFT rights on that one yet. It wasn't in their it showed up in the Bisping contract, which made me look at it. I'm like, oh, they're getting savvy to this, right? They're starting to they want to lock this stuff up. But that's where we keep going. Are you going to do anything? What's your plan? Because we're now educating ourselves in that industry. So if you're not bringing anything quantifiable or anything valuable, or you're going to create something stupid that has no utility, no community, is going to die off after just like a stock dump, right? Where they're like, oh, we're just going to create these art, and then it just dies afterwards, right? Well, we're not interested, right? We're going to pass. We're going to take NFTs are really about community. Yes. It's about community. And yeah, I mean, when you look at it like a comic book or a baseball card, that is a community, but it's a very massive community that everyone likes Spider-Man, everyone who likes, a baseball player, a hockey player, football player. But this is really about building an ecosystem for yourself, and that you have all of this, this cachet with all this talent allows you to build this all out. It's like it's just a wonderful ecosystem that everyone eats. Everyone's taking care. And that's what we're trying to make sure that we're really, and that's where, again, like, unlike because people would say, okay, well, it's like joining the guild. I'm like, unlike the guild, if you want to get rid of your creative hustler key, you can just go on OpenSea and you can sell it, right? You don't get that with the guild fees, right? Which you have to pay annually. This is a one-time fee. We're not going to tack on any of these bullshit things everybody is. Oh, okay, well, now there's going to be a yearly fee that gets saying, no. If you're not happy, go to OpenSea and sell it, right? If you don't like it, if you're like, hey, I'm out of the film industry now, the experiences and the community is not for me, no problem. Go
I'm confident. We can never guarantee it, but I'm pretty confident you'll at least get your money back, if not make more, because they are going to be a finite resource that's never going to be made again. So you will be able to sell them. So that's where we even said to the film communities that we're going to give them to. I'm like, dude, it's the best scholarship you could get. You can use it for a couple of years, and if you find it's not for you, you can go sell it afterwards. The other scholarships usually like $1,000 to Walter to White's lighting company that you can only use in Burbank if you're in Burbank, and you're like, oh, that's fucking useless, right? Like, when am I going to be there to do that? So we are trying to provide something that people really do find valuable, and by being on the Discord, we're open to suggestions and how we can evolve and how we can change it. We're not planning to come out of the gates and nail it. We think we have an 85 to 90% there because we're ground guys. That's even why we called it the creative hustler key. We're three guys in a basement suite that defied the odds and made it work. Our first film was a cult classic when everybody said nobody wants to see a cannabis film. We're like, okay, they did, and it made money. Then everybody said nobody wants to see another cannabis film. We went to Kickstarter. We raised $242,000 in 42 days. Clearly, the audience did want to see another one. And both those films were invited by the Liberal Party here in Canada to help draft the legalization bill that is now in place in Canada because cannabis is federally legalized here. Both films were invited by the Liberal Party to screen for bipartisan screenings to draft the bill that is now in place. So three guys in a basement suite made a giant impact again. Now, I'm not saying the films did everything, but the Liberals had told us that they'd received so many emails and hard mail, because it was a combination at the time, that they had to bring in the film and they had to take a look at it. And to be honest, I don't know how well you guys follow Justin Trudeau, but he is not a popular guy here in Canada. Mm-hmm. The main reason he won the popular vote was the cannabis vote. They did pay attention to the film. The film those two films brought in so many letters and emails that it was enough for the Liberals to go, hey, we might actually win the youth vote based on this, right? Which is always the tough voter group, right? In the United States or Canada, how do you get the youth to vote? How do you get the youth to vote? So they try to trigger them with emotional things, gender, religion, all those things that, you know, the youngsters, all ages get into. But how do you get the youth to vote? Cannabis was the one. Like, shit, that's why I voted for Trudeau, and I'll never vote for him again because he sucks. But he got me on the marijuana thing. I'm like, oh, he's not legalized cannabis. Got me there, right?
Well, it's legal. So
yeah, it's federally legal. So he did. And the sky didn't fall. Like all the propagandists, like it said for years that there's going to be mass shootings and the sky didn't fall. The sky fell more with COVID than it did with that. That was where the sky fell.
Brother, man, I'm going to ask you a few questions that I ask all my guests, man. What advice would you give a filmmaker trying to break into the business today?
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that one. Probably the best advice that I would recommend is that, you know, as we talked about in the podcast, when you feel that you're working with a scumbag producer, get out of there sooner than later. Right? Like if you have to do it for money, I know I did that, but try to find that one that really is producer, director, someone that doesn't mind taking the extra 5 to 10 minutes to help you. When you find that diamond in the rough, stick to that person and be loyal and work hard for them. Don't get clouded by just the big name company, because if you're with a big name company and you're surrounded by scumbags, chances are you're going to learn, you know, scumbag habits, and that you might end up being something that you never wanted to be. So that, fortunately, I've been lucky enough that I've never had to go down that path, but I know others that went down that path, and I don't think they meant to be malicious. I just think when you're kind of like lived circumstance, when that's how you're kind of born and raised or trained and how you're going to get into the industry, you're going to just think it's normal to overcharge indie filmmakers and steal their rights and do those things because that's just how you were trained to do it. So that would be my thing. If you can find, and there are, and it does seem to be that culture shifting, that when you find those people, stick with them, stick with those people.
What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Ooh, I'm still learning, brother. I don't know how to be a good husband. I think my wife reminds me every week how I'm failing on that. So
if I may quote Bill Burr, the comedian, the stand-up comic, is like, why is it that in our relationship with my wife, I'm always the project. We're always working on me. Always the one working on me.
Yeah.
She's perfect, but I'm the one that's got all the problems.
Yes. So I if we're talking work related though, like in my life, I'm still learning how to do that. Even like I think I figured out to be a pretty good dad. My kids will say I'm okay there. The husband thing, I'm constantly working on me.
I'm the project.
I'm the project. I'm the constant. I am the ever evolving project. I can deliver world-class award-winning movies, but I can't seem to deliver me in an award-winning fashion. I'm working on that.
We're remodeling you all the time. All the time. You're the kitchen and the bathroom that needs to be remodeled
all the time, being remodeled. In the industry, the thing that probably took the hardest to learn, in Canada, it's the financing system, right? And two reasons. One, as I said early on, there's very few that were willing to teach you because they felt, thank God for guys like Gord Riddell and Michael Bobroff and guys here that showed me how to do it. And two, the other part of that is, to be honest, it's the lazy part because it's the unmagical part of filmmaking. Nobody really wants to read government here in Canada, like government bureaucratical, like how do you apply for a federal tax credit? How do you apply for a provincial one? How do you combine the two? That is miserable reading. But if you're coming from the Canadian system or the American system, understanding the finances is the key to a killer producer, right? That is now, everybody comes to me and people are like, I hear you're the whiz. And I think it's hilarious because I'm the guy that had to cheat in math class and I still barely passed. And now I'm considered the whiz, and I'm doing air quotes for your listeners of like financing because I had to learn the hard way. And there was days where it was really tough because, I think like a lot of people, I struggle to focus. I probably ADD and stuff where, it's put the phone down, have a coffee, turn everything off on your browser and read this boring shit and understand it. Getting the talent and pitching, that's the fun part, right? Going out there and the excitement, going to markets, everybody wants to do that part. It was like that realization when you turn the light bulb on, you're like, oh, that's what high school is trying to teach me for 5 years. Embrace the suck so that you're ready for the moment when it comes and you can crush it, right? So that was the hardest part for me, is really learning. Like, I hated that stuff. I'd always try to put it off. And then I realized, I'm like, well, I don't know how to do that. How good of an approved producer am I? If someone starts asking me finances and I don't know how it works, I had to learn the shitty stuff. And I realized once I learned that, then that's when this was no longer a hobby and it became how I supported my family, because now I understood every aspect. I knew how to go to the banks and get the money. I knew how to deal with the federal and provincial government. I knew how to do all that stuff where panels and stuff were paying me to come do there, where it was the stuff I least wanted to learn, but had to do. Going back to our boy Arnold, he's like, do the stuff you want to do least, work on that because the other stuff will come. So for me, when I focused on that, that's when I found my business took off.
And 3 of your favorite films of all time.
Oh man, do you know this is like impossible because there's genres, there's different times.
Just 3 that come to your mind right now, sir.
Okay, right now, because I'm working with him, like I know everybody knows, most people know Dolph Lundgren for Ivan Drago, but for me, it was a very different movie that was a huge part of my childhood that I've watched a million times, is Masters of the Universe.
Yes!
I fucking loved him in that. Like when I first saw him turn around in that scene and then he kills like the 2 guys and he's got, I was like, that is He-Man. That is who I pictured as He-Man. Like when he was he was jacked. He was like the hair. I was like, that's fucking He-Man. Like to me, Dolph, like it's funny because like a lot of people don't know him as He-Man. And I'm like, how did me and all my cousins watch that movie a million times? Like I know it didn't do good in the box office.
It did not.
It got panned, but as a kid, I loved it. So that's up there for me. I love Masters of the Universe.
Red Scorpion.
Oh, I love Red. I do. I've watched all Dolph stuff. I've watched Red Scorpion, Dark Angel. I come in peace. You leave in pieces.
I come. It's actually called I Come in Peace because I was working at the video store when it came out. They changed it to this Dark Angel crap, but it was always called I Come in Peace.
It's got 2 titles depending what territory you're in. Some is Come in Peace. The other ones it's like and he's like and you leave in pieces. I know. I watched. I was like
genius.
I loved So I was a big Dolph fan. That's why the opportunity to work with him, I was like, hell yeah. But it's amazing where just most people know him as Ivan Drago and then obviously Expendables, right? But Masters of the Universe, I got to put Goodfellas in there. It's one of my all-time favorites, right? Joe Pesci's like just hard to beat there. And then, if I'm going, like I do like the adventure ones, I'd say let's go like either Willow or T2 are right up there for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Those are 2. Yeah, well, I mean, T2.
I think Val Kilmer as Mad Mortigan, that or Doc Holliday are like 2 of my favorite characters that he ever played. And then obviously Terminator Judgment Day. When you can get a thumb going down in lava make you cry as a kid, like I was like, and that
dude, I was just watching Ready Player One, and then the Iron Giant when he was going down. He
I know he does the thumb right. Like
was like that. You see, that's such an Easter egg.
Easter eggs in that is like. It just makes you like that movie is very underappreciated to me. That's I put that one up there. thinking of things sinking, like obviously Never Ending Story. That's the first movie I ever cried to, bawled my eyes out.
Oh no.
I saw that before Bambi, so I wasn't the typical Bambi crier.
The horse, dude. The horse, man. You can't.
Artax, please, come on.
Come on, you can't kill the horse. Sorry, spoiler alert, the horse dies.
He comes back at the end, though. He comes back. Well,
yes, he does. Yeah. Yes, he does. But brother, man, listen, it has been such a pleasure meeting you and talking to you, and I'm excited about what you guys are doing, and I hope it inspires some people to figure out what they want to do and how they can use this new space to kind of raise money for their films, sell their films, build a community around their films, build a career and a business around their movies, which is what I'm all about, is trying to help filmmakers actually make a living at this insanity.
That's like you heard me say, like turning it from a hobby to a business, right, is always the toughest part. When you can do that, I'm always down to help other people to do that too. So I love that we connected, man. I really appreciate you having me on. I enjoyed the hell out of this. Like we have to do it again just to wrap, even if we're not recording, just to even catch up. We're hitting it off.
Appreciate that.
When I come down in Austin, we're going to hang out, man. We're going to
go question
the barbecue, and I enjoy the hell of it. Thank you very, very much for having me on. And for your listeners, if you, for those of you that are interested in the Creative Hustler Key, you can go to creativehustlerkey.com. The pre-sale is going to start this weekend on the 16th. You have to join our Discord and say that you're on this podcast. Say like, hey, I heard in from the podcast. Just acknowledge yourself in the general chat. We'll put you on the white list for the pre-sale, because we do anticipate these to sell out. Like I know just here in Alberta alone, like all the communities are chomping at the bit just for the Rolodex access and stuff like that, right? People are wanting to get in there. So, please join our Discord. If you go to creativehustler.com, you'll be able to find, we've got it step by step all laid out. Even if you want to just come and don't want the card, but just be part of the community and be in the Discord, like please, by all means, do that as well. And then the regular sale will go April 17th. So, but today, if you're supporting the Hustler podcast, then you will, if you announce that you came through there in the Discord, then you'll get whitelisted to get into pre-sales on the 16th.
Awesome, brother. I appreciate you, man. Thank you again, buddy.
No, thank you. Appreciate it.